This is Center Stage, putting your firm in the spotlight by highlighting business owners and other industry experts to help take your firm to the next level. Hey everyone, and welcome to Center Stage. I am your host, John Henson. And first of all, if you've been watching the video version of the show, you know I am in a new setup now. I got moved to a new office. So I have a window now. It's pretty great. I get to see cars going by on the street. I can open the window when it gets too hot in here. But it is kind of a busy street. So I'm hoping that the car noise is not a distraction. We'll find out. Let me know if you do end up hearing it and we can make some adjustments. I've got a bunch of other places I can go record. But this week, we are talking about Facebook. If you remember last year, we had an episode all about mastering LinkedIn, and I wanted to have an episode dedicated to Facebook in the same sort of way, because it's just another big social media platform that has a lot of value for your marketing strategy. And joining us this week to talk about it, making his return, his second appearance on the show, is Danny Decker. Danny, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, John, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, so if people missed you last time, give us the brief rundown of what you do and why you're the guy to talk to about Facebook.
Yeah, cool. Well, I think the most important thing we talked about last time I was on the podcast was your ping pong prowess, right? So
yeah,
for those that don't know, I actually co-founded Spotlight Branding with Mark Sniglia back, 10, 11 years ago now, something like that. Yeah. And John was one of our earliest employees, and we played a lot of ping pong, and John got to the point of becoming just an unstoppable ping pong machine. So like, John, what's your one loss record over the last, couple of months? Have you lost it all?
God, I mean, honestly, still with COVID and just kind of being out and everything, we just don't play as much as we used to. We got to get back into it. It's hard actually to play ping pong with a mask, believe it or not, because you get, it's like going outside and going on a run by wearing a mask. It's a little difficult, but.
So what you're saying is if I find a way to practice hard for a couple of months, you're not playing at all, I might have a chance.
You might have a chance.
All right.
Cool. For the first 10 points, and then I'll find my groove. And
nice. Cool. To the rest of your question. So since I left Spotlight Branding, I started a marketing consultancy. I do marketing coaching and strategy, and you can learn about that at DannyDeckerMarketing.com. But what I'm really excited to talk about is, so I've got a new book coming out called The Automatic Marketing Machine, and I'm co-writing that book. We're actually finishing it right now. We're recording this in early January, and we're wrapping up the audiobook right now, and we finished the manuscript. I'm doing that with a gentleman named Arjan Robbins, who anybody who's listening to this in the legal space, which probably most of your listeners are in the legal space, will probably recognize as the founder of How to Manage a Small Law Firm, which is probably the leading largest provider of law firm management services. So it's really cool. I'm excited to be partnering up with Arjan, and we're writing a book called The Automatic Marketing Machine. It's available for pre-sale by the time this episode airs. So if anyone wants to learn about that, it's automaticmarketingmachine.com.
Awesome. And yeah, I'll put those links down in the show notes, and definitely go check it out, especially if you are in the legal space. Arjan has a really great organization going on over there with How to Manage.
And one of the things, one of the many things we talk about in the book, John, is lead generation and all of that. And Facebook is a huge component of that. And so that's kind of why I'm excited to be here with you today, talking about Facebook and wherever else the conversation goes.
Yeah. So, let's start there. Why Facebook? Because I know for me personally, I'm not using Facebook to go find a lawyer or to find someone to do my taxes or anything like that. So how, if I'm not using Facebook to find a person to work with, maybe directly, how does then Facebook become part of a marketing strategy?
Yeah. So I always tell people, Facebook's not a social network. Forget about social network. Facebook is the world's largest, most sophisticated, most detailed customer database. Facebook knows way too much about all of us. And that's really the front end of Facebook is, social network, share your food pictures, argue about politics. But how Facebook makes money is by collecting all this data on all of their users and selling it to advertisers, right? That's what Facebook actually is. So when we talk about why Facebook, the short answer to that question is because Facebook knows just about everything about customers you may have in your market, and that therefore means it's really, really affordable. It's really cheap. It's really affordable to be laser targeted on the specific prospects that you want to put your messaging in front of. I also always like to start, especially for people who aren't real familiar with advertising on Facebook, kind of drawing a distinction between like organic posting on Facebook and like the Facebook ads side of things, which is I think maybe what we're going to spend more of our time talking about. Like most business owners know that you can create a Facebook business page, or like you guys do this for your clients, John, and you guys do a great job with it. You know, you create a Facebook business page and you put out content. You don't have to pay anything for it, but you post content and people see it and they click on it and they go to your website, and that's all well and good, and that's organic Facebook. But there's also paid Facebook, where you're running Facebook ads, and that's where you're actually spending dollars to take your content and put it in front of super targeted, usually very large numbers of people.
Yeah. And I want to kind of clarify the way I asked the first question, because like, sure, no one's going to make a hiring decision right then and there on Facebook. But I think, especially with our strategy, and I know a lot of the work that you do, it's the big step is getting out in front of people and expanding your reach and making sure that people are aware. And, depending on your industry, Facebook could be a decent lead generator. But before we dive into the Facebook ads, let's talk a little bit about the organic side of things, and specifically boosting posts, because I think a lot of business owners may not be fully aware of why that might be an important part of your marketing strategy. So talk a little bit about that and kind of how does boosting work, and why would someone need to do it?
Yeah. So boosting is really kind of like the first step into that paid strategy, right? And that's when say step one is you make a post on your Facebook business page, right? And as soon as you make that post, even before you spend any money, even before you boost it, like a certain number of people are going to see that post, right? Like based on, if you have 1,000 followers on your Facebook business page, maybe 50 to 100 of them are gonna see it. Or if some people share it, maybe it's gonna be more, right?
Yeah. And I think that's where Facebook differentiates itself from a Twitter or a LinkedIn, because we're on Twitter, on LinkedIn, assuming all of your followers, see all of the posts that come across their timeline, your post will get in front of everyone who follows you on but Facebook does not work like that for business pages. Facebook limits who actually ends up seeing your content, regardless of whether or not they like or follow your page.
Yeah. And frankly, that's super frustrating. And it wasn't always like that. When I first got into Facebook marketing, back in 2009, 2010, if somebody liked your page, that meant they were going to see your content. So if you had 100 people that liked your page and you posted a piece of content, assuming those 100 people logged in that day, they're all going to see your content, which makes sense. That's why you get people to like your page, so they can see your content. But obviously Facebook is running a business, and they sat around and they said, well, if we make it so that the only way they're going to see your content is if you pay us to show your content, well, and so that's when Facebook basically transitioned to become a pay for play. And there's still value in posting organically, like for sure, because you are still reaching people. But if you really want to reach like a significant audience, and especially if you want to get targeted with your audience, you basically have to put a little bit of money in Facebook's pocket. And so that's where a boosted post comes into play. A boosted post is kind of like the first step into Facebook ads, right? And it's really simple, and that's cool, and it's not very expensive. Like you can spend $10 and reach a lot of people. But basically the concept is you post something on Facebook, and then you decide, okay, that was a good piece of content. I want to get a lot more eyeballs on it. You just click the little button that says boost post, and then Facebook's going to basically say, okay, who do you want to show this to? And so you put in your audience. I want to show this to, like, let's say you're a family law firm. I want to show this to, married people between the ages of 30 and 50. And you just kind of dial in your audience, and you say, I want this zip code. I want these demographics. I want to be sure they have kids. That's who I want to show this ad to. And then Facebook says, okay, how much do you want to spend? And you say $10. And it says, okay, for $10, you'll reach about 1,000 people. If you spend $20, you'll reach 2,000 people. If you spend $5, you'll reach 500 people. And you just decide, and you just click the button, and an hour later, your post is boosted, and now you're reaching more people.
Yeah, and talk about the data collection and how much Facebook knows. I mean, you can get crazy specific just in the targeting, and Facebook has some pre-selected options. You can just boost your post to people who already like and follow your page if you want to make sure everyone who's connected with you sees it. But then to your point, you can find and create whole audience demographics based on people in your area that may not even know that your business exists yet. And because of the information that Facebook has on people, you can get your post in front of them and like to my point, extend that reach and get your content out in front of a bunch of people.
Yeah. And it's crazy. Like you said, it's crazy how much they know. Like you could run an ad and you could say, listen, I want to target men who are 32 years old, not 31, not 30, but 32 years old, who live in this specific zip code, who have kids between the age of 3 and 5, who are politically conservative, and who like goat yoga. Like literally you could do all of that. I don't know what that person would be buying, but you like, it's just nuts. You can get just incredibly specific. And from a marketer's perspective, the beautiful thing about that is you can get so filtered. And so you really just don't have to waste your advertising dollars putting your ad in front of somebody that's just not a good prospect. Like you think about putting a billboard up on the highway, right? And like we see billboards all the time for like divorce for men. And it's like, okay, cool. But like literally half of your audience driving by is disqualified just from the fact that they're not men, right? Let alone the fact that they may not be married, they may not be thinking about divorce, but Facebook would allow you to run that same ad, but only target men within a certain age, and you just get so much more efficient. So that's kind of the beauty of it.
Yeah. And I love that billboard analogy because it's so accurate because, Facebook ads specifically, it is just like creating a billboard that somehow knows the exact highway where these exact people are always on every single time. And it's so much more effective and highly targeted. And, kind of to the last point, you don't have to put a bunch of money, especially if you're really hesitant about getting into this ad world. I know us here, we boosted client posts for just $1 at a time. And that's it. And there was, just in some informal A/B testing, I've seen a 5x increase in the amount of reach between just not boosting a post and just boosting a post for $1. Now, that's not going to exponentially keep going up with every dollar, but from 0 to 1, a 5x increase, you can go from 20 people to 100 people. And that's really significant.
Yeah. And I love that you shared that example because a lot of people just assume, oh, if I'm advertising anywhere, Facebook or anywhere, they're like, oh, I got to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars. But it's like literally spending $1 or $5 or $10 makes just a really big difference. And the other thing I'll say is that what's cool about Facebook versus, like a billboard or something like that is you actually can get some real trackable data, right? Yeah. Like if you spend $1 or $5, you can then you can look at your reporting after the campaign ends and you can see that $5 put me in front of 700 people and 30 of those people actually clicked on my link. And like you can actually get the data. So even though, listen, I don't fully trust Facebook all the time, and I think we've had this conversation, John. Like I don't always trust that everything they're saying is completely accurate. I think there's some healthy reasons to be skeptical of the data they provide. But bottom line, you actually get some data to work with, and so you have an idea of of the effectiveness, as opposed to so many other forms of marketing where you're just kind of throwing stuff out there and hoping for the best.
Yeah. So on one side you have boosted posts, and then the other side you have Facebook's ad platform. And, if you have ever worked with Google ads or any other sort of pay-per-click ad setup, it's kind of, it's the same, general line of thinking. But Facebook ads, it builds on that whole, the idea behind the boosting. You are able to target people, you have a bunch of different options. So, talk a little bit just about some of the benefits and reasons to try out Facebook's pay-per-click ads.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the first thing I'll say is, for the lawyers who are listening to this, for most of the most people, going into the actual behind the curtain Facebook ads platform is not a good use of your time.
Right.
Boosting posts on Facebook is simple.
Yeah.
And just about everybody out there can figure out how to do that. But as you know well, John, once you get into the Facebook Business Suite and the Facebook Ad Manager, it just gets cumbersome and complicated and frankly annoying.
Yeah. especially like after you've spent 6 months in there, and then Facebook completely changes the layout and you have to relearn everything again.
And they always do it. It's like they have like a 4-month clock, and they're like, all right, Danny and John are starting to get familiar with this thing. They're starting to figure it out. Let's shake it up.
Exactly.
And like, it's never better either. That's the thing.
No.
It's not like it's like this, like getting better as they go. It's just different and confusing. And anyways, probably people don't want to hear us rant about Facebook ads. We could do a whole, and we didn't even get into technical support.
Right. Oh, geez. Yeah. But yes, no, I agree. If hopefully, like, if you take away anything from this conversation, it's, that if you're not trying Facebook ads, it's something that you then talk with your marketing person about, because yes, as you as a business owner, do not try to go down this wormhole. But that being said, what sorts of things, can you do with Facebook ads? In your expert opinion, should you do it to generate leads? Should you do it to just generate awareness? What's your recommendation?
There is so much that can be done within the Facebook ad platform. And so I do seriously encourage everybody listening to this to seriously look into it. Although again, you should probably work with your marketing agency, not try to do it yourself. But there's massive opportunities. For one thing, when you're working in the Facebook ad platform, you have this whole new level of detailed targeting that's available to you. So like when I got like real specific a minute ago and was talking about like the 27-year-old with 2 kids and all of that, you need to actually be working within Facebook ads to unlock like the maximum targeting options. Boosted posts only give you kind of like a starting point.
Yeah.
But it's so much more than that too. One thing you can do on the Facebook ad platform is you can actually upload lists that you want to target. So, and this is like a game changer. Like, so you have a list of, say, an email list of 2,000 people, and you're sending an email newsletter every month. Well, what if you could also put that list into Facebook, and then Facebook takes the email list and matches people one by one and says, okay, this email address belongs to this guy, add him to the audience. This email address belongs to this guy, add him to the audience. And then all of a sudden you can reach the same audience on your Facebook ads as are getting your newsletter. And so now those people are not only getting your newsletter once a month or a couple times a month, but now they're also seeing your ads on Facebook. And it's that cross-platform like reach that is just really, really important.
Yeah.
You can do what's called creating a lookalike audience. So you take your list of 2,000 past clients and you load it into Facebook, and then you say, okay, Facebook, now go find me 2,000 more people who match the criteria of my first 2,000 people. And that's where Facebook goes crazy with their artificial intelligence, and they parse the original 2,000 people, and they say they have these 100 things in common. Now here are 2,000 more people who have those same things in common, and all of a sudden you're reaching a new audience of people who are very likely to be good prospects. And that's just kind of one thing you can do in Facebook ads, but it's really kind of a game changer.
Yeah. So then, what kinds of things should you then promote? What should the ad, what kind of value should the ad be giving? Because I know, this was something that you have tested extensively, especially when you were, with Spotlight Branding and trying to figure out, because we were using Facebook ads for lead generation, and we tested so many different things. And it was weird because the one thing that worked the most was our email list sign up,
Yeah.
which goes against all conventional thinking.
Yeah.
But that's the one far and away, like crazy good results, like better than average results across, the industry. So, for a law firm or, some other professional firm, even, what sorts of things can a Facebook ad contain or direct people to?
Yeah. Well, and before I answer that, I just want to say the first part of what you just said is super, super important. And it's the difference between success or failure with Facebook ads, which is testing.
Yes.
We tested so many different things, and that's the whole key. And Facebook makes it really easy. If you just go run one ad and maybe you have like mediocre results, you're gonna like give up and be like, well, Facebook's stupid and it didn't work. You got to test a lot of different things because it's just impossible to predict what's actually going to work and what's not going to work. And so that mindset of just testing is really important. But to get to kind of your specific question, I'm a big believer that any advertising you're doing should have some sort of call to action, right? It might be download this lead magnet, right? Like create a white paper. So say you're a divorce attorney and you maybe create a white paper that's like 5 things, 5 steps to protect your kids through the divorce process, right? Or you take advantage of Facebook's really sophisticated targeting and you create a version of that for moms and a version for dads. And so it's like, and then you target, you create one for dads and you target that just to dads, and one for moms and you target just to moms. But bottom line, you're giving them some sort of free content, right? So you're not saying, are you getting divorced? Call me today, right? Instead, you're saying, here's a piece of content. It's totally free. Just give me your email address. And then they give you their email address, and now they're plugged into your follow-up system. So I'm a big believer in giving away some type of content, whether it's a newsletter subscription, a white paper, a free report, a webinar, a master class. Like there's tons of options, but giving something away for free typically works well. And now that's not to say you can't also create a campaign where you are like trying to drive calls right then and there. But generally speaking, from what I've seen in hundreds and hundreds of campaigns, Facebook tends to work a little bit better for those kind of like nurture campaigns where you're giving them some content. Because like you said, when somebody is urgently looking for a divorce lawyer, they don't log on to Facebook and say, hey, they don't log on to Facebook to solve that question. They either they ask their family and friends for recommendation, or they go on Google, right? But they're not like, let me log on to Facebook and see if I can find a divorce lawyer in between my friends arguing about politics.
Right.
But if you give them some sort of, if there's a white paper that shows up while they're scrolling through their news feed and they see that and they're like, oh yeah, I should read that. Like that's how you get people through Facebook in, most of the time.
Yeah. And to your point, just the idea of testing different types of ads and resources and stuff like that. That's why it's best left to your marketing person, your marketing agency or whatever, because that's what you have to do in Google ads. And it's more, and I'm going to ask you about this here as one of the last things I've got for you, but you can't go into it expecting to just put $100 into one ad, trying it out, and then basing your entire opinion on it off of that. It takes a bigger budget, and it takes a lot of different testing that, your time is just not best suited for. And so, that's kind of what I wanted to ask you here. And I know it's different for everybody, but for your recommendation, how much money should someone put into a Facebook ads campaign? And then what are some of the metrics, within Facebook's ad suite that you should be looking at to gauge the general success or failure of that campaign?
Yeah. Really good questions. So the first thing is, as far as budget, it doesn't have to be like an overwhelmingly huge budget. Like if you're able to spend, say, $500, if you can put $500 into a 2-week or even a month-long campaign, with those $500, you're typically going to reach about 10,000 people or so, like very rough estimate. which is usually enough to at least get a sense of, hey, are people responding to this campaign or not, right? So if you bring $500 to the table in ad spend, you can at least get some decent data. If the more you're willing to spend, the quicker you're going to learn what's working and what's not. So like, if you can spend $1,000 or $2,000 in a month, you're gonna be able to test a lot more things, and you're gonna be able to figure out what works more quickly. But a $500 spend is enough to at least figure out, like, hey, is there potential here or not?
Yeah.
And then as far as the second point of your question, which is kind of what metrics should you pay attention to, that's where it really depends on what is the purpose of your campaign, right? Like, let's say, a really common way to use Facebook is that you're offering some sort of lead magnet, right? So you're offering that 5 tips to protect your kids through divorce thing. And your goal is to get people to download the lead magnet. Well, step 1 is to show them the ad on Facebook and get them to then click on the ad so they go to your landing page, right? It's like a 2-step process. They have to see your ad on Facebook, then they have to go to your landing page. And if you run the ad, you spend $500, you reach 10,000 people, but only 10 or 20 people actually clicked on your ad, then it's like, oh boy, like something is off here. Like either our targeting is wrong, or like this message is just not attractive, or so right off the bat, listen, if we're not getting at least 1 to 2% of the people who see the ad clicking on it, well, that's a problem right there, and we need to stop and figure it out. But if you are getting, say, 2 or 3% to click on your ad, but they're still not downloading your resource, well, then you need to think, well, is there something going on the landing page? Like, I'm getting traffic to the landing page, but people aren't actually downloading the ad. So maybe it's not an ad problem, maybe it's a landing page problem. So basically, it just is about getting kind of scientific and detailed about your process. Like, specifically, what are you trying to accomplish with your ad campaign? And then you kind of just got to look at the data points each step in that journey.
Right. Yeah. So, man, I think I've covered everything that I can think of. Is there anything that we've missed so far talking about Facebook?
No. I feel like the thing I would want to leave lawyers and really any professional services firm out there is, if you haven't at least experimented with Facebook ads, like you're missing out. You're missing an opportunity. It's not, I can't promise it's going to work for everybody. It's not going to work in every situation. But in terms of a cost-effective, highly targeted, easily trackable ad platform, Facebook is about the best around these days. So, call Spotlight Branding, call your marketing agency, ask them about Facebook, because there's just a lot you can do with Facebook ads. And if you're not scratching that surface, you're missing an opportunity. So I just think it's a no-brainer that everybody should at least test it out.
Yeah, I agree. And especially if you've found yourself frustrated with Google ads, because I know, a lot of people tend to gravitate towards that first. But, if you put a bunch of money into Google ads and you just haven't got, you haven't really cracked the code yet, give Facebook a try. It tends to be, at least in my experience, it's a little bit easier to target people as compared to the Google ads platform. Give it a shot. So that's it. So before we wrap up, let people again know about the book you've got coming out with R. John Robbins.
Yeah. So it's called The Automatic Marketing Machine. And we really kind of go in depth into kind of everything a law firm, or really a small business owner of any form, needs to know about kind of their marketing mindset and creating their marketing plan and actually starting to roll stuff out. We talk about Facebook, and we talk about landing pages, and we talk about lead magnets, and all this stuff that we talked about here today, we get into in the book. So by the time this episode airs, the pre-sale will have started. So go to automaticmarketingmachine.com and you can pre-order the book. There's tons of bonus materials in the book. Like, it's a really good book. I'm just gonna come right out and say it. It's a really good book. It's super practical. So again, it's Automatic Marketing Machine, and you can pre-order it by the time you're listening to this episode.
Awesome. We'll have to get Arjan on the show once the book comes out. and have him talk about it. So
Okay.
awesome. So yeah, one last question for you. It's our one question that we ask everybody here at the end of the show. It's if you had one final piece of advice for our listeners out there, what would it be?
Well, I already said everybody needs to test Facebook ads. So I won't repeat that, even though that's the first piece of advice. The second piece of advice is take that email list that you're using to send out email newsletters and all that stuff and give it to your marketing people and ask them to load it onto Facebook so that now you can be cross-targeting people. So they're getting your emails and they're seeing your ads on Facebook. Super tactical suggestion, but hey, I'm thinking about tactics because we've been talking about Facebook all day. So it's a super, super simple strategy, but it's really powerful.
Yeah. And it's a super easy way to just, create more touch points so that people don't forget about you. The whole message we've been preaching this whole time. So awesome. As always, that's going to do it for us this week. Continue to rate, review us on Apple Podcasts and everywhere else that you're watching the show. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got a lot of stuff going on there. All the podcasts go up there. We also publish quite a few other videos there as well. And that's going to be it. Danny, thank you so much for joining us this week.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for listening. To learn more, go to spotlightbranding.com/centerstage.